Hey everyone, and welcome to the final live session of the day 3 of Neil Patel's Advanced SEO Summit. We are super excited to be here. I'm Vasil. I'm also co-hosting this with Clayton and Paul. Neil will be here tomorrow around the same time when he will be delivering 2 keynotes back-to-back about demystifying SEO, as well as breaking down his process when it comes to search engine optimization. But I'm also super excited to have Anne here with me, who I will introduce in just a moment. Anne, how are you today?
I'm wonderful, thank you. How are you?
Good, I'm great. Thank you for joining us. And where are you joining us from today?
From downtown San Francisco.
Excellent. So we're not too far. I'm on Treasure Island right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, across the bridge, and you're in downtown. I'm actually heading there right now. If you guys just joining us in chat, Michael Howard is here, our regular. We also have Adrian, who've been here throughout the summit. Just say hello. Make sure that, I want to make sure that you can hear us loud and clear. Okay, great. We got a lot of engagement. And one of the things that I want to mention before we start with the final session of the day is that we really appreciate all the feedback that we getting from you guys. So if you have any specific feedback, feel free to reach out to us. We actually will be hosting a special session right after this presentation with Sai, who is a founder of Crowdcast. We will be hopefully bring some of you guys here on screen with us, so you can chat with us live and share your experience throughout the summit, and maybe giving some feedback on how we can improve. But I also wanted to quickly share a screen and remind you guys about the contest that we have going on. We have a contest which is happening today. It's happening, in fact, right now. So let me focus on my screen here. And all of you, after registering for the summit, all of you were automatically placed into Neil's Insider Club. So we have a lot of great comments here. Best summit I ever been a part of. But the main reason why you should be paying attention is that by participating and sharing on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as via email, you get an opportunity to actually win a one-on-one consultation with Neil. It's a 1-hour consultation where he will break down pretty much everything that you need to be doing in your business, not only related to search engine optimization, but pretty much to grow in your business in general. And he will spend one-on-one session with one of the lucky winners of the contest. Besides that, we're giving away all access passes to the Growth Marketing Conference, free SEM Rush Pro accounts, and signed books by Neil of his most latest book, The Hustle. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and step away, and I'm just going to give the floor to Anne. But before I'll do that, I'll make the introduction. Anne Ward is a futurist and O'Reilly author. She's also CEO of Circle Click Media, which was founded in 2009. She was a web developer for many years, and through her love of analytics, Annie transitions into the field of search engine optimization, as the field was just forming, so she was definitely an early adopter. And she's currently writing, actually her book is out. She currently finished working on her book, which gave the name, okay, she got a book right here, The SEO Battlefield. Perfect. And today's session is all dedicated to SEO is a battlefield and how to actually win it when it comes to search. So Anne, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background? What are you focusing on right now? Something that inspired you to write this book. And then we will make this session super interactive. So it will be a lot of actionable Q&A. So prepare your questions, guys. Hit that orange button located right here, and we'll get to them, to as many as we can. So Anne, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. I guess I'll start with a little bit. Thank you for the background. I will say that I am a serial tinkerer. I have been since I was a wee child. I disassembled my clock radio at age 9. I had a Commodore 64 at age 6, and I've just always been one of those people that likes to tinker. And so I started my career as a developer and was a developer designer for Apple Education for several years. And at that point, I learned, hey, there's this whole other world that's not just building websites. It's what goes on the websites. And so I learned that if we made little changes, we would see big impacts. And I was doing SEO before I knew what SEO was. So I migrated into the world of SEO through my love of analytics, which is definitely something that has become quite a hot field. There were many years where nobody really understood what I did. They, were like, okay, web stuff, which has migrated into something much more serious, and now it's a billion-dollar industry. So my approach to SEO is very technical, and I wrote the SEO Battlefield because I wanted to give people a way to build a search program without having all of the resources that are needed to truly do it. Because I would argue that SEO in 2017 is very much the developer's game, and it definitely bothers me when I see technical people use their power over the non-technical, and I think that's where SEO has gotten a bad name in some cases because there's too much mystery. So my handbook that I've written for O'Reilly is absolutely a book that breaks it down by search practice, by field, by type of SEO, by how to run campaigns for SEO, how to generate traffic for SEO, and it's a very granular handbook that is, I think, hopefully going to become the standard for the industry. I actually do outline some standards I suggest for the industry for practitioners, things such as let's not cherry pick our data, let's report on the same things month over month, and restore honor to our field. One of the things we talked about when we were going to do this session was, how do we anticipate Google's next moves? It's a question I get a lot, and it's something that I think is absolutely a misnomer, because I don't think if you're worrying about Google's next moves that you're focusing on the right things. As a technical SEO, I think there's some practical things you can do to set yourself up for success. The first one is to deliver a great user interface. I think that it's a relatively new thing for UI, UX to be a part of SEO, but I have found that ever since Mobilegeddon, which I'm sure many of you remember if you're followers of the field, that, UI and SEO are now like this. What's good for users is definitely going to be good for search. So testing your UI is as easy as looking at your mobile site. I think the main thing to think about when you think about mobile UI is actually test the site yourself and test beyond your homepage. Because even if you run a utility on your mobile site, there are visual errors that tools don't catch. So you have to manually test your user experience. The most common issue I see companies when they're optimizing their mobile presence is their tap targets are not large enough. You want to take into account all finger sizes. Not everybody has, teeny tiny fingers. So you want to take into account that there are different sizes of hands, and that is going to make your mobile users stay longer, and that's going to make the search engines recognize that. I think another technical element for SEO that a lot of people, have ignored but need to not ignore is the need for speed. I think Google AMP and Facebook Instant Articles are pretty big hints from the bigger players that we need to absolutely pay attention to speed, because the high performance programs that are in place by the big players are going to spoil the user. And so if you don't catch up and your mobile site loads slowly, or you have too many tools and you're bloated, or you're not putting CSS, Java where it belongs, or minifying your JavaScript, you're going to suffer the consequences because users will not wait around for you. I think another key thing that a lot of people miss in their excitement and anticipation of SEO is to have comprehensive analytics. I think understanding how your site is performing is the key to making sure that you're engaging the right users and finding the right traffic. I think this is a place where a lot of people think that they have it down. They say, oh, well, we've installed GA, but they don't really look at the specifics. If you have links on a homepage going to multiple multiple instances of a link going to the same page, you need to put what's called custom event tracking in place so that you can tell which instance gets the most clicks, for example. So I think analytics are absolutely the cure to SEO mystery, and they're absolutely the guiding light to where we're going. And so I've seen a lot of companies ignore that step and then just sort of try to make it up later. But the main thing for SEOs and people who are hiring SEOs alike is to make sure that you pick a few core metrics, report on those consistently, and do not change them based on what you think. Report month over month. Looking at less than 30 days of data can be very misleading, and that's where people get caught in analysis paralysis. Just because you can get real-time data doesn't mean that that's going to give you great insights. I also think something that I'm using right now at my agency to drive a lot of traffic is social media tuning. It's been debated in the community whether or not social matters to SEO because it's not a recognized ranking factor. I would argue that being recognized or not recognized has absolutely no bearing on what you should be doing. The fact is that social media tweets get indexed and they bring traffic, for example. And so anything that brings people to the site and gives them a good experience, even email will work. I would actually predict that email could end up being a ranking signal at a certain point because of the quality of traffic that can come from email. And then lastly, I think my biggest tip and something that I'm seeing across the board with all industries and all clients is security. I have noticed that the sites that have not deployed SSL and that have not deployed it meaningfully have been penalized or are going to continue to be penalized. I think there's a big sweep coming. There are free SSL certificates. It's easy to deploy. You don't necessarily have to have a webmaster do it. If you have a good ISP, you can have them deploy for you. And it's a very simple way to show your users that nice green padlock in the browser, and that security makes people happy. The other thing is, if you are using tools like Zendesk or microsites, it's very important to make sure that across all your tools and all your domains that you're deploying SSL uniformly, because if you have subdomains within your master domain that do not use SSL consistently, you're going to have a disproportionate amount of direct traffic. That's something I see a lot of organizations struggle with. They think that they're so great and that's why they have the direct traffic, but in reality, the hard and fast rule is that you should not see more than 20%. So if you're seeing more than 20% direct traffic, that's likely not people clicking in, typing in directly in the browser. That's most likely going to be people who are misattributed because they're passing secure to non-secure traffic, which is definitely a very common issue, and I see it so much that's why I felt like I needed to share with all of you today to save you the headache. But in terms of anticipating next moves from the search engines, the best antidote to that is to stay up on your research and to be in compliance. Be in compliance with W3C, be in compliance with the other governing organizations, but I wouldn't get fixated on that. I definitely think that it's important to realize that Larry Page is academic at heart, and bibliometrics are absolutely one of the central foundations to SEO that have been true for the 10 plus years I've been doing it. Think of your website as a research report. Who are the relevant people that would lend you credibility? So link building for the sake of it is actually going to hurt you in 2017, but meaningful references from credible authorities are what signal relevance to the engines. So think about it academically. Citation analysis, bibliometrics, those are what you should focus on, not on little tiny algorithm changes, because that is chasing rainbows, because it will only get you so far for so long. Following the practices, doing the work, measuring what you're doing, and being open to seeing what that measurement brings you, whether it's good or bad, having no sacred cows, that is what grows a site. And so I know I'm seeing a lot of questions, so I would love to turn it over to the Q&A, because I'm sure there's a lot of good stuff. I want to help people.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's make it as interactive as possible. And for all of you, let's add more questions for Anne. She's extremely knowledgeable when it comes to search engine optimization across all of the topics. But let's go ahead and start from the very top here. The most upvoted question right now is from Diana. How to start to rank higher when you got a brand new website with zero traffic?
So Diana, are you in the chat?
She's in the. I'm assuming she's in the chat, Diana. Do we need her to clarify a little bit the question?
Yes, because that's a little too general for me to give any kind of meaningful feedback. I will say that as a general rule, in the beginning, you should be okay leveraging paid along with organic tools. I'm not only an SEO, I'm considered a growth hacker, a growth scientist. So I think if you have immediate traffic needs, the first thing you should do is, number one, consider using paid tools to supplement while you build up your organic, because you're not going to switch it on day one and pierce the zeitgeist of your industry. I'm not sure what your industry is, Diana, but I would say if you're in a highly competitive one, then you probably want to localize. I think in a lot of cases, local SEO makes more sense than trying to go for national targets. If you're resource constrained, I would focus on, directory listings in Yelp and other places that are relevant if it's a local business. Make sure you get the NAP right, which is name, address, phone number. That is something that sounds really simple, but I've seen a lot of small businesses struggle with keeping that unified across a lot of different mediums. And you may find that it makes more sense to maintain a Facebook page than to maintain a homepage if you're hyper-local or if you don't have a lot of resources. So it really depends on where you're going. I think, for starters, I would definitely get some great content up there that's relevant to people, start pushing it out on social, leverage your connections that you have to work that, and then build an email list and start marketing to those people, send newsletters. You got to start turning on the funnel of information and outreach, and be sure to measure everything that you do so that you know where to focus your energy, because the scattershot approach is not a good long-term one. It's okay in the beginning, but if you want to feed your funnel, you've got to measure it. And so my favorite tool for that right now is Hotjar.
Excellent. Nobody mentioned that tool yet. We covered tons of great tools. So yeah, Hotjar is a great analytics tools. Everybody should check it out. Speaking of, as far as we're on the tools topic, let's just cover it. What else in your growth stack, not just related to search engine optimization, but maybe in general too? You mentioned you're a growth hacker. So what else are you using?
So I actually cover that in the book, shameless plug.
Okay.
There's a whole chapter just on tools. So there's different types, right? There's diagnostic, there's analytics, there's tools to send things outbound, there's CMSs. So in terms of like a broad, basic, I need to diagnose the site, what's going on. I really like SEO. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like SEO Optimer. I'll put it in the chat here. But it's a really good basic diagnostic of the health of a site. It's free. It takes a second. And aside from that, I really like Chrome Developer Tools audits. You can run a site audit in seconds from if you go to Chrome and you go under View, Developer, Developer Tools. You can quickly run an audit and figure out, if you're pushing the limits of size, page size. But SEO Optimer also will tell you how many resources you're calling out to from the server side. So I've seen up to 50, 60 server calls in one page load. That's crazy. You want your page to be under 3 megabytes, for example, to load on all platforms, all browsers, all connections. And in order to do that, you need to be viewing how big your page is. So like if you're in WordPress, use a cool utility called WP Smush, and that will actually help you to downsample your images so that you're not hitting those limits. And if you feel like you have video or other assets that you can't downsize, up your hosting package. That is well worth the money. Do not skimp on your hosting packages. That is like not a good use of resources to save $30 on hosting. Always go for the bigger package and when in doubt.
Great, excellent. So let's move to the next question from Zhao here. Which tactics do you use to instantly boost your blog's organic traffic in a competitive niche?
So in a competitive niche, specificity is key. So I like to do what is called building personas. So I study analytics and I start to build profiles of who I think my user is. Let's say in this example, I know my users are, my potential customers are moms. And maybe those moms are in the Midwest. They're not in Silicon Valley. What I would do in that case is I would look at, okay, well, where are these people spending time in the Midwest? Well, they're not searching on Google, they're searching on Bing. Okay, so I can run a small paid campaign on Bing targeted to these people. I can run Facebook, deploy the pixel, do lookalike audiences, do some quick ads there. But in terms of social, I would definitely, for that particular audience, I would try Pinterest. I would get some great visuals with those blogs. I would vertically crop them for that specific niche, because Pinterest will crop your images in a way that's maybe not necessarily compelling. So I would launch a Pinterest campaign, maybe Twitter. I wouldn't necessarily do Facebook if I was on limited resources, because they've made it harder for companies to reach people. But definitely I have found with social and social advocacy that deploying campaigns with beautiful images always outperform those that don't. The statistics are pretty compelling on that. I think it's something like 3-to-1 likelihood of someone clicking on something if it has a strong image or a GIF with it, reaching out to people, talking to them, and not at them. So finding influencers, there's a bunch of tactics you can use on engaging influencers and people with bigger followings in order to get them to become your advocates. You always have to give something before you ask for something. That's number one. Number two, talk to them, not at them. If somebody's talking about your company, that doesn't give you license to solicit them. If they're talking to you, then it does. So it's the difference between using the ad sign versus the hashtag on Twitter, for example. And then just running campaigns and carefully managing. I would use Google Campaign or another tool tracking URLs when you send those blogs out on each individual medium, and then running a campaign report afterwards to figure out what got you the best traffic. In that case, I think the sky's the limit. You just need to be very careful and cognizant of what's working and what's not, so that you can redirect your efforts where it matters.
Excellent. So hopefully, Zhao, it was helpful answer for you and for everyone. Let's move on to the next question here. Here's the one from Phil. Can the new generic top-level domains like guru.estate, etc., rank just as high as the traditional .com, .net domains? If yes, why do we not see many of those at the top of the Google?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Is it written?
Yes. Let me add it to the chat as well, if you can see the chat.
Okay.
It's the first question, the most upvoted question on the very top.
Man, there's so much action here in this chat room. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, we have over 6,000 people joining live.
Wonderful. Well, so generic top-level domains. So you're actually using a subdomain there. Top-level domain would be, oh, sorry, I read that as guru.estate. No, you're saying .guru.estate. So the question is, can the new generic top-level domains rank as high as traditional? The answer is yes. Google doesn't seem to care as long as you're giving people what they want when they come to your site. Where .coms, .nets, .edus we're going to carry more weight is going to be on Yahoo and Bing. The older engines are going to care more about domain extension than Google will. Things that worked 3 years ago on Google work on Yahoo and Bing. And so I think as SEOs, we need to really be careful to not spend our whole entire life thinking about Google, because it's only a piece of the puzzle. If you're targeting older males in the Midwest, Bing is your best bet. You know, if you're in financial industry, Yahoo's not bad. So I think there's another emerging engine which I'm really fascinated with right now called Ecosia, which was started out of Germany a couple years ago, and they take the profits from every search advertising and they plant trees with it. And I think that's pretty cool. So right now they run mostly on Bing, but I think that's just sort of a temporary thing as they grow. Their trajectory of growth is pretty amazing. And so I would caution SEOs to not worry too much about Google. It's the big player right now. That does not mean it's going to be the big player in a couple years. They're always going to be a part of the puzzle, but they're not the whole thing. Diversification is definitely your best bet, always.
Excellent. We have a lot of solopreneurs here joining us today, and some of them are just starting out with search engine optimization, and some of them don't have much budget to outsource. So do you recommend, in terms of hiring, I guess, let me rephrase that question a little bit, who would be, when you are ready to optimize, right? You have your website, it probably gets a little bit of traffic, maybe anywhere between 1,000 and 10,000 visits. What kind of mindset you should be in when it comes to search engine optimization? Do you need to be hiring somebody, learn everything yourself? When do you recommend hiring someone and outsourcing it?
I definitely think that if you're resource constrained, you know, you want to get yourself in a position where you can update your site very easily without much technical intervention. So, you know, get yourself to WordPress or a stable CMS system versus, you know, Wix or something like that. I'm less likely to recommend that to anyone because I don't like their code. But I think if you hire someone and you're very low budget, make sure you have very clear deliverables of what that person is going to do, because SEO covers a lot of things. It covers everything from content to server configurations to, you know, all sorts of, I'm so sorry. Genius here forgot to mute her cell phone, sorry. So I think the main thing is, if you have the resources to get your website up, spend that money on somebody who can help you create great content and push that out on social or run some ads for you. If you don't have the resources to get a site up, spend your resources on that and get a CMS system deployed so that you can update content without their intervention. The main thing is that, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of consultants out there who like to take advantage of those who are less knowledgeable. And so that's why I say make sure that you are getting clear deliverables for what you're asking for. If an SEO tells you they can get you guaranteed rankings, run far, far, far away, because they can't. Nobody can. And I also think another thing I've seen novice and entry-level people struggle with is an obsession over keywording. And I think in the beginning, you need to focus on increasing overall organic traffic versus keywording, because, you know, that's something that in my mind comes a little bit later. You do your setup, you put stuff out there, you measure it. Don't come to the party thinking you know what people are searching to look for you, because it will always surprise you. I've been doing this as long as it's been a thing. And it never ceases to amaze me how people are searching. But I would definitely also, too, if you're looking to hire an expert or guru, ask for references.
Great. Excellent. So Randy, hope it takes care of your question. Let's see here. We have a bunch of questions coming in. And if you here seeing the question that you really like, and to answer, go ahead and click upvote, as we will be starting from the most upvoted questions first. What is one question that comes to mind you wish more people asked you? Maybe so beginners like me don't just lose sight of the big picture.
That's very meta of you. to ask a question that is a question. What would a question be? I mean, I tend to work with established companies and startups, less with individuals. I think, you know, the hardest thing that people struggle with is, where do I start? To me, I think where you should start is all dependent and contingent upon resources and competition. If you are resource constrained, if you know you only have $1,000 a month, and you know that you have 10 competitors that are twice as big as you have to go specific. Specificity is key. You have to go local. You have to use your own network and basically, you know, leverage the relationships you do have. If you're in that smaller echelon, email is your best friend. Email, like I said before, I think email is actually going to be a ranking factor at some point. But use your resources the best that you have and be realistic about what they're going to get you. Because if you only have $1,000 a month and you're starting a business and you're part-time, just create a Facebook page and send people there and have an action that they can call you. Or, you know, don't waste resources on building a big site, because once you build a big site, you're going to have to spend a lot of energy and effort and resource to market it. So I think, you know, I get asked, where do I start? And I think number one is be realistic about what your competitive landscape is and what resources you have to come to the table. Because that's where I see the smaller players fail, is, you know, champagne dreams on a beer budget.
Yeah, and to add to it quickly, so we had a great presentation yesterday to wrap up the day, how small players can compete with enterprise with Aaron Edges. So for those of you guys who missed it yesterday, definitely go back and take a look. He provides some very actionable tactics specifically on that. But let's see, let's go to the next question. Which host do you recommend for higher speed with a small budget? Shared hosting, cloud hosting, which type of host is to start with? Then when growing, which one to upgrade to?
So I think in terms of smaller hosts, you want to look at, you know, most hosts will list who else they're hosting. So I would say the one host I would never ever recommend, no matter what your budget is, GoDaddy, because it's a spammy host. So I would go smaller versus bigger in terms of size of the hosting company, because you basically, when you're hosting with one of the bigger ones, you don't know what C block you're on. You don't know who your neighbors are. And so you can actually be penalized for things that have nothing to do with you, because you're buying a small spot on a big street versus buying a small spot on a smaller street. If you are on a WordPress site, I really like WP Engine. I think that they do a good job of optimizing. You also want to find a host that is HTTP2 protocol, so you want to find somebody that's on the new protocol, which is faster. So HTTP2 is going to be where all the sites are migrating. You also want to make sure they're IPv6. You want to ask a bunch of questions. And again, you know, I would see if they list who some of their clients are, and if they don't, I would be cautious of that. But I do think WP Engine is really reasonable. I've moved for a lot of hosts over the years, so they're the only one recently that I feel comfortable endorsing, because I've had great experiences with them. If you're going to grow your site, there's Amazon's performance is second to none, but it takes quite a bit of resources to deploy. I really think that, just go with a smaller local player. I definitely think going with the bigger ones puts you at risk. And, ask some questions like, what's your uptime? What's my up speed? What's my down speed? How many page loads before I get kicked up to another tier? I think those are all fair questions. But I think I would stay specific to your region if at all possible, because then that way you're not sharing with big spammy sites. Excellent.
This is a very comprehensive answer. So I'm glad we took care of that question. I personally also love WP Engine. We're using it for Growth Marketing Conference, and it works really well. Okay, so let's move to the next question from Mark. Say I'm a travel site doing an article on Miami Beach. Should I do a separate long 2,500 plus word article on Miami Beach hotels, restaurants, nightclubs, or combine all of these keywords since they are closely related to do one long blog, 3,000 plus words, and include all? Trying to see if I understand the question. And
yeah, me too. Me too.
yeah, it's I guess maybe we can rephrase it slightly, and let's say that what kind of advice would you give to that person in terms of content marketing and search engine optimization? Maybe some strategies that he or she could be using when it comes to content production, and how they would be needs to be doing keyword research for it.
Right. I would say that there's no magic number in terms of blog post length. I think if you're chasing that, you're looking at the wrong things. I think focus on creating content that is relevant to your desired audience and let that govern what you're writing, not any kind of arbitrary length. That being said, I have noticed at my agency that longer form content tends to outperform shorter. People still love listicles. Many years later, I did my first listicle over 10 years ago, and they still kill it because people like to know what they're getting. So I have found that about 1,000 words tends to be the sweet spot for us. And using subheads to break up the text, using big bolds for your paragraphs, and using lots of images in between. People really love that. You're going to add video if you happen to have video. Don't make it any longer than 3 minutes if at all possible, and splice it and use a host. Don't host it yourself. Host it on YouTube or one of the bigger players. And those posts tend to do well because they perform well on mobile. Posts got longer form when mobile because we do this a lot. And people like to scroll up and down. So make sure to bold what your high points are, because sometimes that's all people read.
Great, Mark, hope it was helpful. Let's see here. So we got tons of questions coming in non-stop. Let's see what's at the very top here. We got Nick with content curation help with search engine optimization. Any tips on how to use curation for SEO?
So the largest sites on the internet are either sites that host content or aggregate other sites' content. So I think when you're saying curation, what you're meaning is aggregating. So in terms of yes and no. So sites like Scoop.it, scoop.it, all they do is aggregate other people's content all day, every day. And so I think that those are useful on your own site too when you use tags and blogs. Like if you use a tag in WordPress, typically you click on that tag and it takes you to an aggregation page. I've actually had a lot of good luck. I shouldn't say luck because it's all, hard work and in measurement, but I've had a lot of luck in aggregating page content on topic with very carefully curated topics. And so I've seen those aggregate pages start to rank in and of themselves in search because people can pick and choose out of multiple things. And so I think the tip for curation is if you're starting small, use tags in WordPress, make those clickable, and then test them yourself to see what works. And then you can try to rank those aggregate pages once you have meaningful content there. But in and of itself, it's not useful if what people are clicking into isn't valuable to them. So good luck.
Thank you. Okay, great. And I actually also a part of the business to community team. They do quite a bit of content aggregation. They build the whole website of 3 million views a month purely by aggregating other blog posts, popular blog posts on other websites. So definitely something worth trying and getting into.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see here. Hi, Anne. Any idea why Google Analytics doesn't show the majority of organic keywords? It says not provided.
I do, and I actually talk about that in the book. So the official reason for that was about 4 or 5 years ago. Google moved organic keyword data out of Google Analytics under the guise of security and privacy for their users. So this was right around the time they started to tout the benefits of SSL. So the official reason that they will give you and that they wrote when they announced it is that they want to keep user information secure. The real reason is that they wanted us to use AdWords. SEO got too good. People found it too easy to pull data and do SEO, and they didn't like that. So, you know, it's a cat and mouse game I've played for many years. There's a whole team that looks at us SEOs and tries to outsmart us, and that's, hey, you know, it's a Tom and Jerry kind of thing. But what most people don't realize is that that keyword data is still accessible to you in aggregate in Google Webmaster Tools. You just have to look for it. So it's a little harder to run reports, but you're not the only one seeing not provided. Everybody is seeing not provided. And that is because Google thinks that that's more secure, but I'm not buying that.
Great. All right, so I'm just going to go over all of these questions to see how many we can get. The audience is super excited.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions.
Absolutely. Here's one from Jason. Is there a good rule of thumb to minimize the number of WordPress plugins for optimization? Is there a maximum number where you see immediate degradation, or is it just the type of plugin? If so, which ones should we stay away from?
I think that there's no hard and fast number. I would just be cognizant of page load times. So I would use what is useful to your individual organization, but I would also run a developer tool speed test to see how slow your load times are, because every little tchotchke and doodad that we put in our site source is going to ultimately lead us to ask the browser to render it. So remember that a web page is kind of, in a way, a piece of software, and so do we want bloat there or do we not? So I would always try to weigh the usefulness of the plugin to the organization versus the inconvenience to the user, because ultimately the user is king, and if you're making them wait so that you can track them in 10 different ways, that's not really going to help you. So I think the only tools I've seen in WordPress that really tend to cause a lot of bloat are the all-in-one SEOs. So like I think Yoast is good if that's all you have the resources for, but I also think things like their sitemaps are not very good, and there's some maybe technical performance issues there. But overall, you know, I wouldn't be limited by a number. I would be limited of what do we really need.
Got it. Great. Let's move to the next one. Okay, so 11 upvotes. Question from Sarah. Would changing an HTTP site to HTTPS negatively impact SEO, because previous SEO was going to HTTP?
No, not at all. Not at all, unless you need to do, basically you just need to make sure that your canonical URLs will redirect server side. So just test it yourself. You know, if I go to these old URLs, make sure you tell your server to redirect them, and it won't cause you any issue. Typically, people don't share the full HTTP anyway, and it should redirect. But definitely something I would look at, and something I talk about a lot in the book, is canonicalization. You can do things almost any way you want as long as you document them correctly and you're in compliance. The benefits of moving to HTTPS are definitely huge, and the cost is minimal. It's like $60 a year. There are even free ones, but there are no negative impacts unless your users are getting a bad experience, and the best way to figure that out is by testing it yourself.
Great. And one of the questions that actually one of my friends asked the other day, and I got some answers, but I want to also pick your brain on that. So if you are moving from, let's say, a website like Weebly or Squarespace to WordPress, what is some of the best practices that you need to keep in mind in terms of URL structure and everything when you have to move the whole site completely?
Right. I would do 301 redirects on a server level, on a directory level, just so that if anybody hits, you know, anything that falls under a certain structure will automatically get redirected. I think also making your 404 page compelling. A lot of us just don't even look at it, but you know, instead of a 404, maybe take people to the home page so that they don't feel that sort of jolt. But typically what you want to do is I would randomly test. So I would migrate to the new one. I would do 301 redirect server side just to make sure that your pages are actually going to their destination. And, you know, I think monitor your tools. So if you've deployed Google Webmaster Tools, it will tell you what your 404s are. And so will a lot of WordPress tools. And so if you start to notice them, just make sure you heavily monitor them in the beginning and make sure that you are looking at your top pages and making sure that that experience is good for the user. Because a redirect is not going to hurt you if you do it the right way.
Great. I'm trying to make sense of the other questions. So hopefully Deborah, or maybe Clayton, if Clayton is here too, maybe you guys can clarify, as Clayton was the previous presenter while I was preparing you for this live session. When writing your URLs for blog posts, a previous presenter mentioned underscores means or operator. What to use, not hyphens, means. I'm trying to understand the question. Are you reading it right now, Anne?
Yeah, I am, because some of you guys are asking some detailed questions. So yeah, I pulled them up here myself. I think people tend to trust. I wouldn't say that the search engines really care if you're using underscores or hyphens. I would just say that the common practice is dashes right now, or hyphens. I think that's what people are used to seeing. I think, you know, people actually look at the URLs that they visit, especially with the advent of fake news and online trust is at an all-time low. I think if anything, just go with hyphens because that's the preferred practice right now. Don't use funny characters. It's really the main thing. Like that's a very small stylistic thing. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Deborah, hope it was helpful. Brandon is asking, if we have outsourced SEO, and they do, and they're not performing, what is the most important information I could present to prove that to our CEO? I'm new to search engine optimization, but it was clear in our meeting our optimizer didn't have any specifics to show us.
Well, I would definitely trust your instinct because you probably, if you're having that feeling, you're probably right. What I would do is ask them for an organic traffic report. I would ask them to demonstrate to you that they have done things that have resulted in increases in organic growth, not in overall traffic, because what some shadier SEOs will do is they will buy cheap traffic and try to pass it off as paid because they know you don't know how to look it up. So I would ask for a specific organic month-over-month traffic report that will help you to determine if there is any actual growth there. I wouldn't get excited about specific keywords unless you've set that out as a specific goal for them as an agency or as a consultant. I would also go back to the statement of work or the contract that they'd hired and ask them to prove to you that they have made good on what they have promised. But if you're thinking that, you're probably right. And if they're not forthcoming with information, that means they have something to hide. So an organic traffic report should be something that's 2 seconds for them to run. If that is met with excuses or resistance, there's your red flag right there.
Excellent. And I've been looking through the chat right now, and it looks like a couple of people already bought your book, Anne, right now. So definitely excellent job answering all the questions at the Q&A. In case it doesn't look like we'll be able to get to all of them, so I just wanted to give you opportunities. A lot of people will be also watching this, watching the recording. What is the best way to reach out to you? And maybe also what is the best way to get your book?
Absolutely. So the SEO Battlefield is available on Amazon. It is available on Barnes & Noble in addition to O'Reilly.com. It's available as both PDF and as print copy, like this lovely little one right here. And so the best way to reach me is via Twitter. I'm on Twitter all day, every day. It's my favorite platform, and I'm pretty shameless about it. Which is, my handle is @Anbot, ANEBOT, and I'm pretty much Anbot at everything. So on all the stuff. So if you search Anbot, you'll definitely find me.
Excellent. And do you speak at any events? And I'm assuming you do, right?
Yes, I do. I speak at a lot of tech conferences in San Francisco. Specifically at the Search Engine Journal industry events. I've spoken at quite a few of those, but I'm very, now that I have the book, I'm probably going to be doing more speaking ops, but if you go to my agency's website, circleclick.com, you will be able to find my most recent speaking gigs. I usually list them there as well.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, and everybody, now we have all the information that we need to get a book and reach out to Anne. Let's do a rapid fire at the very end. We got about 5 more minutes and try to get to at least 5 more questions. Do you see DuckDuckGo and its emphasis on privacy of your searches growing as a competitive player in the search engine industry?
Absolutely. I think DuckDuckGo is defied everybody's predictions and expectations. I do think that they're competitive with males 20 to 50. I think that they tend to skew higher income, and so if that's your target, it's a good place for you to optimize. I've been watching them for a while, and I really like what they're doing, and I like that they're flying in the face of what so many people said they couldn't do. I'm all about the renegade. So I think that's the demographic. I think overall the hard and fast rule should be what is the key demographic for this engine, or for my specific use case, and then take that and find the engine that matches it. But DuckDuckGo is definitely your 20 to 50-year-old males, which I know is a big span, but they're a tech savvy audience, and definitely worth optimizing for if that's your target.
Great. Next question is from Ahmed. What is your advice to a reseller in the web hosting business? It's really hard to think to acquire clients from SEO when big brands are dominating first page. Do you understand the question?
I think what they're saying is they're reselling services, web hosting services, and you're right, that is a large resource. That's a very competitive business where there are a lot of big players. But I think that comes down to what resources. So if you're reselling a bigger company's services, they should absolutely have a program enacted to work with you on it. So they should actually have a reseller program or a microsite, or they should have resources available to you. I would start out by making sure that you're clear on those and utilizing them. But you're not going to just waltz into Google and compete with a ginormous player. So that's where you leverage your own network. You go for the low-hanging fruit there. You build an email list. You got to roll up your sleeves and be very specific in who you're targeting, because there is no way to compete with people that are much bigger than you if you're not willing to work.
Great. All right, so it looks like we have, let's see, we still have a few more minutes. We need to wrap up in about 3 minutes, but let's get to the next question. Melissa, how do I choose keywords with low competition and high volume?
Isn't that the $1 million question? So I think if a keyword is high volume, by definition, it is high competition. So I don't look at keywords, I look at pools of keywords. I think if what you're looking for is low competition, high volume, I think you may be setting yourself up for disappointment. But I would say that, again, specificity is key. So thinking about things in terms of think to the future. Voice queries are on the rise with, connected home devices, with mobile devices, digital assistants. People tend to start searching more in long form questions. So I would start setting my sights on longer, bigger goals in question-based format versus just individual keywords, because that you're just going to lead yourself to heartache.
Okay, great. And finally, the last question of the day that we have time for. And by the way, even if you, we'll move you to the next session, but I'm not sure, if you have a little bit of time to chat with the audience, you guys are welcome to stick around here. I don't know if you have to go. We also would like to be mindful of your time. But again, this session will be available here on demand. So in fact, you can come back here and chat with the audience at any given time. That's the beauty of that crowdcast, at least until Thursday, until we'll put everything on demand as a part of our members area. But the last question of the day, what would be the top 5 things to do to rank a local service business website? Example, plumbers, roofers, florists, etc.
Wow, that's a very specific number. Number 1, I would say study your competitors. Learn from what they have already spent their energy and resources on. Number 2, be realistic about what your resources are and deploy what you have. If you have a teenager in your house who's great with Twitter, use Twitter. If you have access to an intern or any resources locally to help you, I think that absolutely should be utilized. Number 4, I would absolutely find all your local listings like Angie's List, Craigslist. Look at what locally is popular in your specific market and make sure you have a listing there, and make sure that your information is consistent, name, address, phone number, always across all platforms. And make sure you do a Google Maps listing. Like, a lot of people forget to take that extra step, and if you don't do it, Google will try to do it for you. And that way you come up in local mobile search. And then lastly, and not least, make sure that you have good analytics data that you understand and is actionable for you, so that you know who is coming to you and you know why.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and so much knowledge was shared today with our audience. Everyone is super excited. And guys, thank you so much for asking great questions, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. We're looking forward to joining you in the next session with Clayton. Just we call it a feedback session, where you guys get an opportunity to give us some feedback on the summit and share with you some other quick things that we have planned for you. But Anne, thank you so much again.
Thank you, everybody, and I will see you on the interwebs.
Sounds good. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.